Hi, I'm Thomas. Welcome to the Parachute Advice Podcast. My life has taken a lot of twists and turns, and on this podcast, I will dive into those experiences. The goal is to help everyone listening learn from my experiences and hopefully avoid some of the mistakes I've made. Welcome to today's episode of the Parachute Advice Podcast. I'm your host, Thomas. As I mentioned in episode 1, as long as I can remember, I've always been overweight. At one point, nearly hitting 375 pounds with a clear path to 400 if I didn't change things. On today's episode, I'll get into more of the details around the plan I built for myself and the tools I used to go from 360 pounds when I started in January of 2020 to under 175 pounds today. At the start, my plan was very simple. I would use my FitnessPal app to calculate how many calories I could eat each day to lose 1 pound a week and just do that. The only rule I put on myself was not lying. If I eat it, put it in the app. Own my choices and go from there. This also meant being honest about how little exercise or activity I did in a day. And by how little, I mean none. I literally hated the idea of physical activity. I was honestly the master of avoiding it. I set the app with a starting weight of 360 pounds and a goal of 290. Which is what I weighed my senior year of high school over 20 years earlier. I set it so I would lose 1 pound a week and put my activity level at the lowest possible one. Not very active. In most calorie calculators, this would be considered sedentary. The next piece was I want to do all of this through diet and not by adding a ton of exercise to lose weight. As I mentioned earlier, I hate exercise. I would rather give up what I eat in a day versus doing what I would have to do to burn those calories off. Something I read several times was that you can't out-exercise a bad diet. And God, did I have a bad diet. So where did this put me then? My FitnessPal calculated I could consume about 2,500 calories a day. At the time, I wondered how I would survive on that. Now I wonder how I could eat that much in a day. Just to level set everyone, the commonly accepted idea is in order to lose 1 pound a week, you need to reduce your calories by 3,500 a week, or roughly 500 a day. So you could either skip that donut you normally have for breakfast, or try running for 30 to 45 minutes at a vigorous pace. Here is some hard truth for everyone. All the technology out there that tells you how many calories you burned are garbage. Many studies estimate that they overcount calorie burn by 10 to 20%. They all overestimate your calorie burn to some extent. If my fitness tracker was even close to accurate, I should have been losing weight or at the very least not gaining weight for all those years of terrible eating habits. Most experts will tell you that on average 70 to 80% of daily calorie burn is base metabolic rate. So just living and breathing is where most of your calories go. In an article on Vox titled, "Most of Us Misunderstand Metabolism," here are 9 facts to clear that up. A neuroscientist and obesity researcher at the National Institute of Health was quoted as saying, "It's generally accepted for most people the base metabolic rate accounts for 60 to 80% of total energy expenditure." So this was the principle I was going to live by. Another thing I did that a lot of nutritionists will tell you is a horrible idea, but one that worked for me, was I would push my daily calories as low as possible to both speed up the process and make the day I go to maintenance calories that much more exciting because of the amount of food options that I could add back in. So for example, back when I could eat 2,500 calories a day, I was holding myself closer to 1,800 each day. And as of today, I hold myself to 12 to 1,400 a day, where my daily target is 1,850 while dieting. Truth be told, some days I'm closer to 1,100. Not because I'm forcing it, but because that's just what I wanted to eat. Am I hungry? I guess, but one thing I've really learned is there's very different forms of hungry. You can have the "I really need to eat, my stomach is killing me" hungry, or the "I'm bored and eating some chips might be entertaining" hungry. This is the one that was the hardest to deal with, especially later in the evening when watching TV. The less than planned calorie consumption process I followed can be seen in my results. I averaged 0.34 pounds lost a day, which equals a calorie deficit of approximately 1,000 each day. Now that is not to say every day I lost weight. I quickly learned that weight loss tends to move in waves, and for me, tracking it daily, I was able to learn how how schedule changes and what I ate affected this. For example, my lowest weight every week is usually Saturday morning, and then it creeps up through the course of the next few days, and then slowly falls again Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I have no idea why it works this way for me. I suspect it's the time of day plus routine. But in the end, I don't care why as much as just knowing, so when I see the jump in weight midweek, it is not an oh shit what happened moment as much as a let's see how Saturday goes. Now comes the big one. You will be dieting in one form or another for the rest of your life. I personally did not gain all this weight because I had good habits. So to stay where I am, I will need to focus on this for the rest of my life. That said, don't let this scare you. Now that I'm on maintenance, which I'll discuss in future episodes, things feel much more, quote, normal. It has and will keep getting easier. It will be less intensive, and I can be somewhat more flexible, but I will need to keep a close eye on my diet forever. And you know what? I feel so good now that I'm happy to do this to keep feeling great. Don't let this keep you from starting. Trust me when I say this, it is worth it. But as you go through the process, make sure you have a plan for the day the, quote, diet ends. The other thing I did that was very helpful is keeping my ultimate dream goals separate from the good enough goals. What do I mean by this? When I started, I always thought it would be amazing to get down to 200 pounds. But the idea was too scary to start there. That would have been over 160 pounds to lose. Thinking about doing a diet for over a year and not hitting your goal for me was too overwhelming. Instead, I said, let's start with a goal of being the weight I was my senior year of high school, which was 290 pounds. That made the whole process seem a lot less intimidating. I figured I would push for that and would be just under a year to get there, which seemed so much easier to stomach at the time. As I went along, I began shifting the goals as I saw what was possible and got close to each one. Ultimately, I decided I would and could push to hit over a 50% weight loss, or 200 pounds for my heaviest. I thought it would be cool to say I was less than half the person I used to be. This would be the first time in my life I would be in the healthy category for BMI. For me, that meant going from 360 pounds when I started to 175 pounds to finish. Yeah, I know BMI is garbage, and I'll probably talk about it more in depth in a future episode. But for now, just know it shouldn't shape things for you. But it still seemed like a cool target for a guy who had always been so overweight he rarely was even on the chart. To circle back at a high level, my initial plan was simple. Calculate calories per day and eat that spread across 3 meals and a before bed snack. When I was eating 1,800 calories a day, I would usually do a split like this. Breakfast, 150 to 250 calories. Lunch was 400 to 500 and dinner was 800 calories. Then my snack would be about 200 calories. As I went along and the number of calories I needed to eat dropped, it got harder to hit my numbers with this plan, so I adjusted. I added in intermittent fasting. I didn't do this because I necessarily bought into the health benefits. It was more about the mindset, and it certainly seemed to work for me. What do I mean by this? I skipped breakfast because it was not in my window of 16 and 8, meaning eating for 8 hours and fasting for 16. So I would eat lunch at about 11 a.m., and before that I would just have black coffee all morning. And then I finished eating for the day by 7 p.m. After that, I only drank tea or water. One big help was when I got the late night snack craving. I would tell myself, you can eat all the chips you want tomorrow when your eating window reopens. And surprise, surprise, when that window opened, I didn't crave them anymore. The other big perk was the amount of calories dropped significantly. Lunch was still 400 to 500 and dinner was still 700 to 800. And even a quick snack right before 7 p.m. would be 100 calories. So my daily total dropped from 1,800 to 1,400 or less calories. As I mentioned, that 400 calorie drop equals almost a pound of fat a week lost. One last piece of advice I'd like to share is to take photos. The frequency is your call, every day, once a week, or even just once a month, but something to log the gradual change over time. It is the one big thing I regret. To this day, when I look in the mirror, I don't see a huge change. Yes, I've changed a great deal. I see it when I look at old photos and compare them to today, but when I look in the mirror, it's not as obvious to me. When I'm out and about, I'll catch glimpses of myself in reflections and not even recognize it's me for a moment, but otherwise, I don't see it as clear as others do. Plus, it would have been cool to have a collection of photos from the different stages of the journey. I've been able to put together some before and afters, including the one on Instagram from me at my heaviest and lowest in the same clothes, just different sizes. But not having a series of photos to compare is something I really regret, like I said. So I'd recommend it to all of you. Take photos over the course of your journey. In the next episode, I will get into the details of how I manage my calories and the food I consumed in greater detail. Hopefully today's episode gave you the motivation to start this journey. As I said, it really is this simple. Just eat less than you need to maintain your current weight and the weight will come off. Is it easy? No. But it's not hard either. It just requires a lot of focus and personal accountability. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to you joining me for future episodes of the Parachute Advice Podcast. You can contact me at parachuteadvicepodcast@gmail.com. That's all one word, parachuteadvicepodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at Parachute Advice. Thank you for listening, and please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.